Welcome to the session on ancient Indian life science. In the previous sessions, we already discussed about the ancient Indian botany, that is Vriksha-Ayurveda. Vriksha-Ayurveda means botany in ancient India, as we had already discussed in the previous sessions. We had already come across the botanical informations available in Kautilya's Arthashastra, in Brihasamhita of Varahamihira, and also in Vishnu Dharmottara Purana. Vrikshanam Ayurveda. Ayurveda means Ayush. It is the study on Ayush, knowledge about the life of plants. Knowledge about the life of plants. Vrikshanam Ayusho Veda. So in this session, let us discuss on Agni Purane Vriksha-Ayurveda. Agni Purane Vriksha-Ayurveda. In Agni Purana, the chapter 282. Mahapurana Agneye Vriksha-Ayurveda ka Vriksha-Ayurveda Kathana Nama Dvashityadhika Dvishatamo Adhyayaha. Dvashityadhika Dvishatamo Adhyayaha. That means chapter 282. It is dealing with Vrikshanam Ayurveda, Vriksha-Ayurveda. So, in this chapter, Dhanvantari says that he is narrating the science of the treatment of plants. The science of treatment of plants is narrated in this chapter. So he says the auspicious plants to be planted in different directions of the house. Which are the auspicious plants to be narrated in different directions of the house? He is mentioned. Pragvato yamyatastvambra apyeshvatha kramena tu plakshaschottaratas shubhaha. Plakshascha uttarataha shubhaha. Plaksha is to be planted in the northern direction of the house. Plaksha plant is to be planted in the northern direction of the house. Then Vata. Vata means Ficus bengalensis. Vata vriksha. It is to be planted on the east direction of the house. Then Prakvataha. Yamyataha Ambraha. Yamyam means here. Yamyataha means to the south. Ambra, mango, is to be planted. And Ashwatha Kramena. Ashwatha in the north. These are auspicious plants to be planted in the, surrounding the house. Then further he says that the thorny trees grown on the southern side near the house are auspicious. So thorny plants, thorny trees grown on the southern side near the house are auspicious. In a house of residence, a garden is to be planted. So in a house, there should be a garden. That is what he says. So today also we maintain a garden in front or near the house. Garden is to be maintained. And for maintaining a garden, how to do it? He says first, sesamum plants and trees bearing flowers are to be planted. Tila plants and trees bearing flowers are to be planted. Dakshinam dishamutpannaha samipe kashtakadrumaha. Kashtakadruma means here thorny trees. Kantakadrumaha, thorny plants, thorny trees. They are Shubha, where Dakshinam Disham Utpannaha Samipe Kantakadrumaha Udyanam Grhavase Syat Tilanvapyatha Pushpitan Grihniyat Ropayet Vrikshan Dvijam Chandram Prapujyacha. Taking these trees, one is to plant them after worshipping the Dvija and the moon. After worshipping the Dvija and the moon, one has to plant them, these trees. So here, because the plants are so sacred and it is the life to us, that is why they are to be planted with worshipping. So in olden days, the people worshipped those plants which are very much comfortable to human being, which are very much necessary to human being, because they knew it very well that plants give life to us. We are part and parcel of the nature. Dhruvani panchavayavyam hastam rajesha vishnavam nakshatrani tatha moolam shasyante dhrumaropane. He says, Dhruvani panchavayavyam hastam prajesha vaishnavam nakshatrani tatha moolam shasyante dhrumaropane. Dhrumaropane. In planting the plants, the 5 fixed nakshatras, the one presided over by Vayu, Panchavayavyam Hastam Prajesha Vaishnavam. Hasta, the one presided over by Prajapati, and the one presided over by Vishnu are auspicious. These nakshatras and Mula are considered auspicious for planting trees. So this is how he says. There are some of the nakshatras which are auspicious for planting the trees. Dhruvani panchavayavyam hastam rajesha vaishnavam nakshatrani tatha moolam shasyante dhrumaropane praveshaye nadi vahan pushkarinyam tu karayet. How to make the pushkarini? Pushkarini should be done near the garden. Pushkarini means reservoir. Water reservoir should be there near the garden, because the plants are to be irrigated. They should be irrigated properly. The watering is to be done to the plants which are being planted. So, praveshaye nadi vahan pushkarinyam tu karayet. Bring into the garden a channel of a river, of course a reservoir, that is Pushkarini, to be made there. Either a channel of the river is to be brought, or a Pushkarini is to be made. A reservoir should be made near the garden. So garden should be equipped with a reservoir, Pushkarini. A well-planned garden should be there. So how it is to be constructed, it is what he is saying. That means they have the knowledge of plantation, they have the knowledge of gardening in those days itself. Hasto magha tata maitra magham pushyam svasavam savasavam Jalashaya samarambhe varunam chottaratrayan Sambhujya varunam vishnam parjanyam tat samachare. So here he says how to construct the Pushkarini. When to start the digging, that also to be done on an auspicious day, on an auspicious nakshatra. For beginning the digging of a water reservoir, the 5 fixed nakshatras, the one presided over by the wind god, Vayu, Hasta, Maitra, the one presided over by the Prajapati, Pushya, and the one presided over by Vishnu, Varuna, and the 3 Uttaras are the auspicious nakshatras. Then Sampujya Varunam Vishnum Parjanyam Tat Samacharet. After worshipping Varuna, Vishnu and Parjanya rains, that digging is to be done. After worshipping Varuna, Vishnu and rains means Parjanya, the digging is to be done. So this is what he says. Then he says which are the plants to be planted. Here, Arishta, Ashoka, Punnaga, Shirisha, Priyangu are to be planted in the garden. So which are the plants to be planted, he says. Arishta, Ashoka, Punnaga, Shirisha, Priyangu, Ashoka. So Dhanvantari says, Arishta Ashoka Punnaga Shirisha Sampriyanguvaha Ashoka Kadali Jambus Tatha Bakula Dadimaha. Arishta Ashoka Punnaga Shirisha Priyanguva to be planted. Ashoka plantain, that is Kadali, Jambu, Bakula and pomegranate are to be planted. So these are the different plants to be planted in the garden. Then next he says, after mentioning the planting of the plants, how to irrigation. So at the end of the summer, both in the evening and morning, watering is to be done. And during the winter season, on alternative days, plants are to be irrigated during the winter season. And then in the night in rainy season and of the land is dried up, anytime the planted trees are to be irrigated during the rainy season. When the land is becoming dry, the plants are to be planted. The plants are to be irrigated during the rainy season. They are to be irrigated in the rainy season when the land is becoming dry. So about the irrigation, he says, Sayam pratastu dharmante shitakale dinantare. Sayam pratastu dharmante shitakale dinantare. The summer, both in the morning and Sayam and Prataha. Shitakale dinantare, during the winter on alternative days. And Varsharatrau bhuvashoshe, during the Varsha, during the rainy season, when the land is becoming dry, and also on the night. Sektavya ropita drumaha sektavya. The next he says about the distance between the trees for plantation. What is the distance between the trees for plantation? Uttama vimshatir hastam madhyama shodashantaraha sthanantaram karyam vrikshanam dvadashavaram. So the distance between the trees is the best distance is 20 hastas. 20 hastas between the trees is the best distance, and the medium is 16, and 12 is the worst one. So if it is if the distance is too less, that means if they are plants which are becoming tree, they are too closer, then they are to be shifted from one place to another. They are to be transferred from one place to another. So Uttama Vimshatir Hastam Madhyama Shodashantaraha Madhyamaha Vimshati Hastaha Uttamaha Sthanantaram Karyam Vrikshanam Dvadashavaram. Yadi Dvadashavaram, if it is 12 hasta distance, then Sthanantaram Karyam. They should be transferred to another place because it is the worst case. Vifalasyurdhana vriksha shastrena dohi shodhanam. Then he says about the nourishment of the plants, treatment of the plants. The closely grown trees become fruitless. Why? They should be transferred to another place, he says. Closely grown trees become fruitless. In the beginning, the affected parts are to be cleared with the help of a knife. With the help of the knife, the affected parts are to be cleared because the closely planted trees, they become fruitless. So it is mentioned in the shloka form, Vifalasyurdhana vrikshaha shastrenadohi shodhanam. The next he says about the nourishment of the plants. Dhanvantari says, Vidanga krutang kakta sechaye shitavarina palanashe kulathaischa mashair mudgairyavaistilaihi. The trees which are smeared with the parts of vidanga and ghee are to be irrigated with cold water. So cold water irrigation to those plants which are smeared with part of vidanga and ghee. They are to be irrigated with cold water. In case of premature destruction of the plants, in case of premature destruction of the fruits of the trees, phalanashi, they are to be sprinkled with water mixed with kulatha, masha, mudga, barley, and tila. So in case of premature destruction of the fruits, they are to be sprinkled with water mixed with kulatha, masha, mudga, barley, and tila. So that is phalanashe kulathaischa mashai mudga yavais tilaihi. Phalanashe kulathaischa mashaihi mudgaihi yavaihi tilaihi. So this is how they are to be sprinkled in case of premature destruction of the fruits. Then Gritashita Payasekaha Palapushpaya Sarvada Sarvada Palapushpaya Grita Shita Payaha Sekaha. So for the growth of fruits and flowers always, if you want always the fruits and flowers, then irrigating of trees is to be done with ghee and cold milk. Shita Payaha Grita. Irrigation is to be done with ghee and cold milk. If we need growth of fruits and flowers always. Avikaja shakritchurna yavachurnam tilanicha gomam samudakam chaiva saptaratram nidhapaye utsekas sarva vrikshanam palapushpari vruddhidaha. The powder of the dung of goat and sheep, the powder of barley and tila are to be mixed with the washings of beef. Avikaya shakritchurna yavachurnam tilanija gomamsa mudakam chaiva saptaratram nidhapayet utsekaha sarva vrikshanam palapushpadi vruddhidaha. So here in Agni Purana, Dhanvantari says that the water washings of beef, along with the objects mentioned above, that is the powder of the dung of goat and sheep, the powder of barley and sesame are to be mixed with the washings of beef. They are to be kept covered for 7 nights. Saptaratra. Saptaratram nidhapayet. They are to be kept and covered for 7 nights. The sprinkling with this causes the increase in the growth of fruits. Sprinkling utsekaha, sprinkling with this, sarva vrikshana, phala pushpadi vruddhidaha. Sprinkling with this causes the increase in the growth of fruits, flowers, etc. of all the trees. Sarva vrikshana, all the trees. Then further he says, irrigating with the water washings of fish causes the growth of trees. Irrigating with the water washings of fish causes the growth of trees. Matsyam bhasatu sekena vruddhir bhavati shakshinaha. Matsyam bhasa, with the water washings of fish causes the growth of trees. The meat of fish covered with vidanga and rice, that is tandula, is the pregnancy desire of the trees. The pregnancy desire, dohada of the trees, is the meat of fish covered with the vidanga and rice, that is tandula, that is the pregnancy desire or the dohada of the trees. Vidanga tandulo petam matsyam mamsam hi dohadam. Vidanga tandulopetam matsyam mamsam hi dohadam sarvesham avisheshena tukshanam rogamardhanam. This destroys the disease of all the trees without exception. This destroys the disease of all the trees without exception. So this is how it is mentioned in Agni Purana, the science of the treatment of the plants. Mahapurana Agneye Vikshayurveda Kathanam Nama Dvashityadhika Dvishatamo Adhyayaha Evameva Vartate. It is present like this. So you can see like this the plant studies being done, nourishment of the plants being done in olden days, even during the Purana period. So it is very interesting to know all these things today also. Even we have a lot of scope for research in all these areas to know about the technology which was being introduced during those days for the nourishment of the plants. And whether they use it to get the fruits and flowers throughout the year, sarvada, because it is being mentioned, and such studies can be done even today also with the knowledge of what is present in our ancient texts. So ancient texts, it is giving a lot of information about plant science. So now we studied about the Agni Purana Vrikshayurveda. So Agni Purana Vrikshayurveda evameva bho vishishtam vartate. It is very much interesting. So we can see further about Vrikshayurveda in next session also. Welcome to the session on Vrikshayurveda. Now let us discuss on Vrikshayurveda by Surapala. Vrikshayurveda of Surapala is the earliest known text devoted completely and exclusively to the subject of Vrikshayurveda. So it is the completely and exclusively related to the subject of Lecture-50, which is known to be the earliest known text. So this Lecture-50, in the concluding verse, the author mentions, author Surapala, he mentions a few facts about himself. There is nothing specific here which may help us to locate Surapala in time and place. There is no doubt a reference to King Bhimapala, with whom Surapala was associated. The King Bhimapala with whom he was associated as a physician. But in it, there is no clue to the identification of his king. He is referred to with the vague and general adjectives suggesting that he was a petty, insignificant ruler. Then there was some try to recognize Bhimapala. On the history of the period, we find Bhimapala in the Shahi dynasty during the reign of his father, Trilochanapala. he fought against Muhammad of Ghazni, who lived during 1040, was in the prison of Chandra, ruler of Sherwa. But except from there, and survived for 5 years after the death of Trilochana, the plunder of his fort by Muhammad in AD 1019 without any royal position. Evidently, this Bhimapala could not have been the king at whose court Surapala was a physician. So another mentioning is that Surapala was supposed to be lived in 8th century AD. 8th century AD. And his identification was also found with the Suresha or Sureshwara, the author of the Surapala and Loha Pradipa or Loha Sarvasva. Is compatible with the known facts about Surapala. Surapala, in the concluding shloka, he mentions himself as preeminent in the science of the physicians, Vaidya Vidya Varenya, and is enjoying in the world a wealth of spotless fame, that is Jagadamala Yashasri. He claims to have successfully experimented the preparations or decoctions on the basis of which he compared the present work. So he composed the present work based on his experiments, it is mentioned like that. This shows that before writing the Vriksha Ayurveda, Surapala had acquired preeminence and fame on account of his knowledge in the field of medicine. So that is also being understood. So like this, there is no conformity on when this Vriksha Ayurveda by Surapala, the composition of this Vriksha Ayurveda by Surapala was being done. So Surapala is very frank and candid on the point. In one of the introductory shloka, he says that he studied the texts composed by the sages, but asserts that he has stated their import in his own manner. He says that the noble men who are simple by nature, having seen his composition and having deliberated over it, will be pleased. This type of assertion cannot be made by a person who merely compiles shlokas taken from other texts. The concluding shloka, that is shloka number 325, does not leave any scope for doubt. Surapala very clearly states that he composed this work. He says that he has done so out of a sense of academic curiosity, kautuka. Kautuka, due to kautuka, he mentions. Surapala succeeded in composing a work of great merit, which soon came to acquire the status of a classic. Subsequent works could not ignore it. They adopted it as their model and often borrowed shlokas from it. So when we analyze the contents of this text, Vriksha Ayurveda, the total number of the shlokas is 325. Of these, first 3 are introductory shlokas. And shloka number 325 is of the nature of a colophon, referring to the name of the text and mentioning its author. The work is divided into 13 chapters without their being numbered. The reading of the chapters and their colophon are not uniformly given in all the cases. In the first 2 shlokas, Surapala requires the place of a king to contain big gardens. He mentions that kings should have a big garden with large lakes. In the third, he introduces his composition. So we can see those shlokas also. In the first, he says, Pumsam sarvasukhaika sadhana phala saundarya guruvathura क्रीडालोल विलासिनी जनमनस्फीत प्रमोदा वहाः गुञ्जभृङ्ग विनिद्र पंकज भरस्फारोल्लसद्दीर्घिका युक्ताः सन्ति गृहेषु यस्य विपुला रामास्य पृथ्वीपतिः नवं वयोहारि वपुर्वराङ्गनाः सखा कलावित् कलवल्लकीस्वनः धनानि सर्वं विफलं सुखैषिणो विना विहारोपवनानि भूपतेः. Like this, the first two shlokas having mentioned by Surapala. The first shloka, that is Pumsam sarva sukhaika sadhana phala saundarya guruvadhura krida lola vilasini janamanaspita pramodavaha gunjadbhranga vinidra pankaja bharas pharolla saddhirghika yukta santi griheshu yasya vipula rama saprithvipatihi. So he says, Surapala says that he is the real king in whose residence there are, in the palace, there are big gardens with large lakes, which are the sole instrument for the fruits of all the pleasures for people, which produce the pleasure increased by the hearts of amorous women, tremulous on account of sports, and who are full of pride of their beauty, and which lakes are beautiful because of the swelling of the weight of lotus awakened by the humming bees. Like this he explains the first shloka, the necessity of garden. In the second shloka also he says, Navam vayohari vapurvarangana sakha kalavit kalavallaki swanaha dhanani sarvam vifalam sukhaishino vina viharo pavanani bhupate. Vina vihara upavanani bhupatehe, he says. For a king seeking pleasure, if it does not have pleasure gardens, that is, young age, navam vayaha, charming body, vapuhu varangana, beautiful damsels, friends, proficient in fine arts, sound of lute, and riches are fruitless for a king seeking pleasure if it does not have pleasure gardens. That is what he says. In the third shloka, as it is already mentioned, he introduces his composition. Surapala introduces his composition, that is Shastrani tavat avalokya maya munina arthasya eva gadita paramatya yuktaya evam vilokya likitam cha vicharayantah santasvabhava sarala mudma apnuvantu. So he says, Shastrani tavat avalokya maya munina, having seen the authoritative texts of the sages. Shastrani avalokya. Muninam Shastrani avalokya, having seen the authoritative texts of the sages, have uttered the highest meaning through my exposition. Arthaha sayeva gaditaha paramatya yuktaya. The saintly people who are simple by nature, seeing this written text. Evam vilokya likitam cha vicharayantaha. Evam vilokya likitam cha vicharayantaha. Deliberating over it will receive happiness. Santas swabhava sarala mudam apnuvantu. Santaha swabhava sarala mudam apnuvantu. So he says in this third shloka that having seen the authoritative texts of the sages and have uttered the highest meaning through my exposition, the saintly people who are simple by nature, seeing this written text and deliberating over it will receive happiness. They will receive happiness. This is what Surapala says. He introduces his text on Lecture-50. So it is a very nice text on Lecture-50, and in the first chapter, namely Taru Mahima, So on the glorification of trees, Taru Mahima means on the glorification of trees. He refers to the merit of planting trees on the side of a road, in a field, and in a pleasure garden. It mentions the religious merit of planting a number of specified trees. Then in the second chapter, that is Nivasana, Taru Shubha Lakshana. The second chapter, it deals with the auspicious and inauspicious signs, Shubha Lakshana, of trees planted near the house, Nivasana, Nivasa Asana. They are considered auspicious or inauspicious according to the direction in which they are planted. Surapala prohibits the planting of trees in front of the house because the shade of trees about not fall on the house. He names the trees which are not to be planted in a house. One should avoid near the house thorny plants, those oozing milk or bearing wild fruits or having hardwood and should not sow mealy and turmeric. Surapala requires the garden to be situated to the west, north, or east of the house. Garden should be situated to the west, north, or east of the house, but never to the south, southwest, or southeast. Garden should not be there to the south, or southwest, or southeast. Then third chapter, that is Bhumi Nirupana, third chapter, Bhumi Nirupana, ascertaining of soil, classifies land into Jangala, Anupa, and Samanya. It mentions 6 types of the basis of their color and 6 types on the basis of their tests. It lists the qualities to be found in a good land as contrasted with a bad land. It favors the Sadharana land as compared with the Jangala and Anupa land. It mentions 3 lists of specific plants that generally grow on the 3 types of land. But in conclusion, it asserts that trees can be made to grow even on the unfavorable land by spending money and putting in hard labor, and through the blessings of gods and kings, trees can be made to grow even on an unfavorable land. The 4th chapter, that is Bijotpatti Vidhi, 4th chapter, Bijotpatti Vidhi, propagating seeds. The method of propagating seeds. It speaks of 4 species of plants, that is Padapa, Vanaspati, Druma, and Lata. And Gulma. Surapala mentions 3 methods for the propagation of plants: by seeds, bija, by sion, kanda, and by kanda, that is bulbous root. He gives separate lists of plants. He gives, Surapala gives a separate list of plants that grow out of seeds, seeds and scions, both bulbous roots and both seeds and bulbous roots. So he gives a separate list of plants that grow out of seeds, scions, then seeds and scions, both, then bulbous roots, and both seeds and bulbous roots. Surapala advises seeds to be extracted from fruits. He advises seeds to be extracted from fruits, ripening in the proper season and duly dried. He mentions 4 different methods of treating the seeds by besmearing, sprinkling, and fumigating in different combination of Vidanga, Brihati, Sesamam, Nala, milk, ghee, honey, cow dung, and fat of animals. Surapala recommends special treatment for the seeds of mango, jambu, panasa, kshirika, and bakula and erwaro. Considering the importance of sowing, Surapala requires the owner to take both and perform religious rites. He should perform the religious rites. He is to sow seeds, followed later by his attendants. The receptacle of seeds is to be covered with straw and sprinkled with milk and water. When the seeds have sprouted, then the straw is to be removed and they are to be dried. Surapala lists the days, constellations, and lagnas favorable for sowing the seeds. So he's listing out all these things. Then we can see the 5th chapter also, which is entitled Vapana Vidhi. 5th chapter is entitled as Vapana Vidhi. Surapala requires a proper field. Vapana Vidhi means method of plantation. Vapana, plantation, method of plantation. Surapala requires a proper field to be selected, in which heaps of flowers, sesame, masha, and others scattered throughout are to be plowed to serve as fertilizing elements. He considers the distance. Of 14, 16, and 20 cubits, that is hastas, between 2 trees to be respectively bad, middle, and excellent. 20 is excellent. Then 16 is medium, 14 is bad. A greater distance is exposed to the danger from storm, whereas a lesser distance causes poverty. So it should be proper. It should not be excess, should not be more or less. For plantation, Surapala requires a pit measuring 1 cubit on all sides to be dried and filled with bones of cows and cow dung. Is to be burnt and then the fire has cooled down. Ashes are to be removed. And it is to be filled with good clay and irrigated with the kunapajala. Surapala recommends both sowing and plantation for mango, pomegranate, pumpkin, wort, and alambuka. The seeds of trapusa and the vegetables are to be sown in a field with good soil. Big seeds are to be sown one by one, whereas smaller ones are to be sown many times at a time. Smaller ones are to be sown many at a time, whereas big seeds, one at a time, one by one. The seeds of naranga are to be sown with the help of fingers, keeping the mouth of the seeds downwards. Panijaka and other seeds mixed with good soil are sown, keeping proper spacing and sprinkled with water mixed with cow dung. So this is how he is explaining the 5th chapter. Like this, we can see one by one the chapters. So let us discuss on the first chapter, that is entitled as the Tarumahima. Tarumahima, that is glorification of trees. Glorification of trees. Bahubhihi kim vane jataihi putrerdharmarthavarjitaihi varame ekah pathitaruhu yatra vishramyate janai. So he says, Bahubhihi kim vane jataihi. What is the use of many trees growing in a forest and sons who are avoid of the duty and prosperity? Putra dharmartha varjitaihi. What is the use of many trees growing in a forest, and also what is the use of having many sons who are devoid of the dharma and wealth? Dharma, artha, prosperity. So, one road is better under which people take rest. A solitary tree on the side of the road is the best one, under which people can take rest. So, planting the plants on the roadside is very much appreciated because it will give shade to the person who is passing by, passing on the road. Varam yekaha patihi taruhu yatra vishramyate janaihi. Yatra janaihi vishramyate tatra yekaha taruhu varam. It is the best one. Varam bhumi ruha pancha natu koshtaruha dasha patre pushpai falaistoye kuruvanti pitratarpanam kuruvanti pitratarpanam. 5 trees growing in a field are better and not 10 trees growing in a granary. Natu koshtaruha dasha. Through their leaves, flowers, fruits, and juice, oblations are offered to the ancestors. Then next it says about the kupa. Kupa means well, reservoir or water reservoir. Dashakupa samavapi, dashavapi samo hrudaha, dashahruda samah putro, dashaputra samo. So he says, Dashakupa samavapi, dashavapi samo hrudaha. A reservoir of water is equal to 10 wells. A reservoir of water is equal to 10 wells, 10 kupa. A deep lake or hruda is equal to 10 vapis. Vapi or the reservoir of water. A sun is equal to 10 hrudas. A tree is equal to 10 suns. So, Dashaputra samo drumaha. Drumaha, tree, is equivalent to Dashaputra. That is what Surapala glorifies the plant, the importance of plant. Then he says, Krida Ramam Tuyah Kuriyat Uddama Palasankulam Devakavya Saro Yakshay Vaset Tatra Yugatrayam. So he says, if he who plants a pleasure garden full of luxuriant fruits, one who plants a pleasure garden full of luxuriant fruits, the gods, sages, divine damsels, and semi-divine beings dwell there for 3 ages, in 3 yugas. Yugatrayam. In 3 yugas, they will be staying there. So having acquired a well, the knowledge of this truth, One should start planting trees because the means for the realization of duty, material welfare, pleasure, and emancipation are through the trees. Dharmartha kama mokshanam drumebhyaha sadhanam yataha. Dharmartha kama mokshanam drumebhyaha sadhanam yataha. Etat satyam parijnaya vriksharopa samarabhet. Etat satyam parijnaya vriksharopa samarabhet. Dharmartha kama mokshanam drumebhyaha sadhanam yataha. This is what he says. Yavad dinani tulasi ropitam yadgrihe vaset tavad varsha sahasrani vaikunte mahiyate. The importance of planting tulasi is mentioned by Surapala in this shloka. That is, yadgrihe tulasi ropita yavad dinani tulasi ropita. For as many days the tulasi planted in a house resides, for those many thousands of years, he, that he means the owner of the house, remains powerful in the heavenly abode. Heavenly abode means here Vaikuntha. He remains powerful in the Vaikuntha. So planting tulasi is very much important. We know in all the Hindu houses we have a tulasi being planted in front of the house. Because tulasi has a lot of medicinal use also. It's so sacred. Tulasi is considered to be one of the sacred plants to the Hindus. That's why it is planted in front of every Hindu houses. So its importance even recognized by Surapala, and he says, Tavad varsha sahasrani vaikunte cha mahiyate, vaikunte saha mahiyate. Kaha who yavad dinani tulasi yadgrihe ropitam vaset. For how many days the tulasi is planted in a house, resides for those many days, for those many thousands of years. He, the owner of the house, remains powerful in the Vaikuntha. That is how the significance of tulasi is being recognized during the period of Surapala. Further, he says, he who plants bilwa, here he is recognizing the importance of bilwa tree. He is also recognizing the importance of bilwa, ashwatha, then vata, neem, plaksha, mango, shirisha, then palasha, udumbara, madhuka, dadima, rambha, priyala. So like this, so many, there's planting of a lot of plants and its significance is highlighted. So they have given a very nice spiritual touch to the planting of plants, because when the people have the awareness of such things, they will be devoted to it. They will plant it and they will nourish it with devotion, considering it will give some good to them in future. So like this, they are considering it and they are planting it and they are protecting it. That's why so much sacredness is given to the plants. So he says, Yastu samropayed bilvam shankara pritikarakam tatkulo avichala lakshmi santishte putra pautriki. That means one who plants bilwa tree, which is pleasant to the Shankara. So bilwa is said to be sacred to Lord Shiva. All of us know. Eka bilvam shivarchanam. Bilvashtaka says. Which is pleasant to the Shankara or Shiva. In his family, Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth for sons and grandsons, remains constantly immovable. And wealth will be there if a person is planting a bilwa tree. So planting bilwa tree is considered to be very much sacred. And also, next, planting the ashwatha is also mentioned as one of the sacred. Ekam yeva hi yoshvatham ropayed vidina naraha yatra kutrapi savsthane sagachet bhavanam harehi. Saha harehi bhavanam gachet. Kaha यह एकम अश्वत्थम रोपयेत vidina ropayet. So the man who is planting one ashwatha tree, solitary ashwatha tree, यह अश्वत्थम रोपयेकम एव हियो अश्वत्थम रोपयेत. One who is planting one ashwatha tree, solitary, that means single. Whenever or whichever place he goes to the abode of Hari, he is going to the abode of Hari. Hare bhavanam gachet. So that much importance for planting Ashwatha tree is given. Ashwatha is very much important. So we can discuss on the importance of Ashwatha in coming session. Because Ashwatha is considered as Vriksharajayate namaha Mulato Brahma Rupaya Madhyato Vishnu Rupine Agrato Shiva Rupaya Vriksharajayate namaha. All the Trimurtis are said to reside in this plant. And all the gods are also said to reside in this plant. Then he says, Vata vrikshadvayam madhyo ropayet yo yatha vidhi Shivaloke game sopi sevitastvapsaro ganaihi. Apsaro ganaihi sevitaha. So this is how it is, its importance is mentioned here. So, Vatavrikshadvayam madhyaha. Madhyaha yadi Vatavrikshadvayam rohet. The man who plants two Vatavriksha, according, Vata means this Ficus bengalensis. Vatavriksha, Ficus bengalensis. The man who plants two Vatavriksha, according to the prescribed procedure, goes to the world of Shiva, where he is served by groups of heavenly damsels. Damsel means apsaras. Sevitaha apsaro ganaihi sah sevitaha. Putra Shivaloke. So much importance is given to planting Ashwatha tree. So by giving this spiritual law, spiritual touch, considering it as sacred, Surapala had given more importance to plantation. So once the people think that it will give some good or it will do some good to them, they will surely plant such plants. So that is why they explained in such a way.